intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Welcome back, everybody. Star Trek Fleet Command fans, glad to have you. Today, we're going to go through the loop, the aggregation loop that just rolled out, how it works, what you should be doing, and little tips and tricks to make sure that you don't miss out on opportunities to move up even faster to progress your loop. And this is going to be something we'll go through some of the math and notes, but we'll do that with spreadsheets on here so that we don't have to actually dive too deep into it. But if you are curious, spreadsheet for this loop will be in the pinned comment section down below. It's also available in our Discord. A big thank you to Blue Mandalorian, who spent a lot of time yesterday filling out a lot of this so that we could have it ready for you today. So let's start with this loop. Now, it begins level 45 and above, and generally speaking, everybody should be fine with it because the hostiles here are not necessarily strong hostiles compared to previous hostiles we've had in new loops, like the Suliban hostiles and the Exile hostiles in Augment. These do not have the same level of difficulty, though they do scale up and get more difficult. As you can see on the screen, you'll see them start adding things like Apex Barrier, ISO, Critical Chance, and much higher damage and mitigation numbers. Now, the good news is these things are actually easily countable via the research, which we'll talk about in a bit. So if you're naturally going through the progression of this loop, and I actually really like this loop because it's a true 5-minute or less a day loop. I actually feel like they got that aspect of it right. Long term, you'll be able to do these without a terrible amount of issue. But let me show you some of these early hostiles. We'll take this off the screen and let's jump over to these 45s. Let me show you why I'm talking about them being weak. Well, number one, 36 million is not really that egregious. And you look at their DPR, 3.62 million, that's quite low. That is G3 level ship DPR. That's like, your level 34 Enterprise or Augur. That's the type of DPR it's putting out. And they do have special abilities. For example, you are immune from gravitational blast and from Borg cube beams. You've got to fight these. They also have a special ability where they will decay your hull. Now, the only way to avoid this hull decay is by upgrading the building, which you'll notice in this video is our focal point of what we're trying to give you the steps to do. To upgrade the building, you have to unlock this currency, which is a common currency. There are multiple jumps here. We get to uncommon, rare, etc. But starting off with common, you can find more of that in the systems surrounding. Now, here's the kicker. How it scales is actually taking a former complaint from players and fixing it. We'll put this on the screen. But if you look, you actually have the same amount of common currency once you max out in the system called Dunt. This is the most currency that you can earn for common, not including the, loot goblins, but there's like a hobgoblin version here. It's a little bit different here with the aggregation loop. But what you're seeing is you're not getting penalized if you punch up, but there's also no point because it's the same payout. And the good news here is it doesn't take a lot to do the payouts in the refinery. It's actually relatively cheap, and these scale up to, again, not be that difficult because you're still sitting in that same range, right? Now, the key is we're staying in also the decay range. We'll show you the building here in a second. Remember, these early steps, there are 4 different groups of these hostiles. You have the common currency, which goes up to level 49. That natural decay is 25%. Then you go up to the uncommon area, which is actually the G5 area, starting at 51. That is going to have a 50% decay. Then you go to the first G6 area, which is the rare. That jumps up to 150% decay. And then last but not least, starting at level 67, you have the epic decay, which is 250%. And this is why you need the building. In fact, to counter the decay of a low level, meaning you can farm these as much as you want, you'll need building level 36. If you want to counter the uncommon, which is right above my head, you need building 51, then 61, and then finally 67 to negate that decay. The great news is there's really no reason to need to farm that much here. Let me show you why. So I'm grinding some of these 49 hostiles. You'll notice I'm not taking much damage. That's because we've got my building up to level 26 already, which has drastically reduced the amount of decay that I'm taking, so I'm able to hit more hostiles. But what I want to show is it doesn't take a lot of these hostiles to get a lot of loot. Now, what I'm currently running is a loot crew that is Enterprise E. Picard, Enterprise E. Data, and Rachel Garrett. I don't have 5 of 11 on there, but you could. You see, I've hit 4 aggregation 49s. What has that paid me out? I am already at 76,000 of the 4-star common. The point I'm making is once you can make it up to these level 49s, you get a very, very good payout of common. And again, this stays the same throughout, all the way up to the level 70 hostiles. It stays the exact same. So you don't have to worry about losing common loot as you move up. So now I've ground out 100,000. obviously not counting anything that might happen in a box. Now let's go over to the refinery and take a look at what's in there. For the common payout, I only need 32,000 a day. So actually just in a few seconds, grind out 3 days worth of the common pulls. And yeah, that's pretty nice. Now, what we're going to focus on now that we're in the refinery section is this building. We want to upgrade the building as much as possible to the point that we want to pull this every day. If we can double pull it, even better. We want to upgrade the building because the quicker we upgrade the building, the better we actually perform because the building has the negation to this decay that these ship abilities have. Now, one thing I need everybody here to pay attention to real quick, like zoom in with me and pay attention. See this little I button right there? You're going to want to click that because what happens is this building resets as you update the refinery, which is normal, but it's not on the levels that you're normally used to. So for example, you hit level 6, refinery resets, meaning you can pull again. Hit 11, resets, pull again. 16, resets, pull again. 21, 26, etc. Resets, pull again, meaning you can farm the refinery section as you're upgrading so that you can upgrade even faster. Now, once you get 26, it takes to level 36 before it resets again, but then you get into the 40s and it'll actually reset every 2 levels, like 45, 47, 49, etc. So just pay attention to that little button, letting you know the next time you're gonna have a major upgrade with the building, and you'll also notice this coincides with the building's abilities. So you'll go into the building itself, which is right here, and you'll take a note that at those big junction marks, it'll jump up. That stabilizer, which negates the hypothermic decay, jumps up by certain level ranges. So you see my next big jump will actually be at 36 here on the building, and that'll jump it up to 25% from 20. So as we continue to move on, that's that negation point we talked about where then the 49s become free farming. Those are things you want to pay attention to. And then that also goes into the research side of this, which you can get those materials in the refinery. And that has piercing for the aggregation, apex barrier, and then several things that are just good for general play out there, including the PvP isolytic stuff, where you also have PvP apex barrier stuff. And then you have wave defense boosters. The Apex Shred and Wave Defense will definitely help those of you who are struggling with your elite solos. You'll find other aggregation stuff as well. And then making Forbidden Tech cheaper to do, which I actually think is really important because this is essentially Forbidden Tech 2.0, but it's giving sourcing to older Forbidden Techs and reducing the cost on some of those as well. Now, in terms of prioritization, if you are an upper G5 player, as in you are 55 and above, you want to focus on the Stasis Globe. You might go, Rev, why do I want to focus on this? Well, let me show you why right here. Well, this is a chaos technology that if you're in G5 is very important. Why is it very important? Increases base hazard resistance. That's all those systems that have hazards, whether you're talking about needing to use your Selkie in the future to mine in G6 space, or whether you're actually just taking it into transition space. This is something that's been made completely free to play that was paywalled previously. Shout out to Nigel, Stony Dude, other amazing volunteers who pushed really heavily for this in the Star Trek Fleet Command community, and this is going to be a must-have for you. Now, if you are a G4 player or early G5, maybe you don't have to worry about that yet. It will take 100 days of pulls to unlock free to play, but the value is definitely there. If you are a mid or upper G5 player, you want to make sure you're pulling that, even if that slows down your research. Now, if you're not one of those players, then the research becomes a priority as well as double pulling the building pull. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying ignore any of these. You definitely want to make sure you're doing your general pulls. But if we're talking about value long-term, absolutely make sure that you're getting the Stasis Globe. Once you get to level 51 in the building, that unlocks the Uncommon. Now, this is only available G5 and above, but it will also unlock the Syndicate Bomb. So, quick recap. As we're going through the grind, it is split into 4 sections. We want to upgrade the building to make it easier to hit the hostiles. Thankfully, the amount of loot that you can gain is quite large, meaning you can store up a lot, and this is less than a 5-minute loop a day. They actually fulfilled one of their promises from years ago, a loop that legitimately takes less than 5 minutes every day that you can consistently pull while also getting good research and good items in that refinery. If you have any questions about how this works, drop them down in the comment section down below. And of course, we're happy to give you some of those graphics and details that make this easier. Live long and plunder. Stay safe with the Space Cowboys. Deuce, that's me. As far as crewing real quick, you know what? Pause. Crewing. The real key is the research, but loot crews are very valuable for the average player. However, if you are finding yourself struggling, your standard run of crewing with things like Joaquim and Pelia below deck for ISO defense, Hugh, Balana Torres for criticals and hull breach, Nurse Chapel, Wrath of Khan Savick, all are for ISO Cascade, all great below decks, and then your normal runs above decks like the Janeway crew, the Strange New World crew are going to be your primary heavy hitters. Things like this that you can see, not that, that's different. But here, let me speed this up and show you a couple other crews. I was thinking about leaving this out, but you know what? Since I've gotten asked so much, if you're not able to use a loot crew, we want to start looking at our Strange New World crews. Upper levels, you would consider using things like Quasi below decks or Section 31 Giorgio up top to combat the apex barrier of the higher level hostiles. But for the lower level, especially getting started, it really comes down to using loot if you can to just move this process along faster. And the research is going to be the key to taking down the G6 hostiles. So there we go. There's my wrap up. We're done. See you on the next one. Love y'all.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.